Real quick, for those of you watching the premiere or watching this afterwards, this is an hour long. If you want to see this split up into two parts, let me know.
Our story continues with Ash and Go arriving in the Unova region. It's been some time since Ash has been here, so he's happy to see it again. Go, on the other hand, hasn't been to Unova, so he's a little on edge due to his first experience with the region being its largest city, which is overflowing with people going through their day-to-day lives. However, the two can't spend much time sightseeing, for they have a mission on their hands. The two quickly make it across the busy streets to the other side of the city, where they find a massive desert stretching as far as the eye can see. This is where the events of Raid Battle at the Ruins takes place. For the most part, they stay the same, at least for now. Ash and Go realize the sands are too hot to walk across on foot. Then they meet Kira, a Pokemon Ranger who explains that they can be pulled on a sled by a flying Pokemon. The two decide to use Dragonite and Beedrill to pull them, and eventually make it to the ruins, where they meet the expedition leader. I will add that the expedition leader mentioned he had called a colleague of his in order to get some backup, but he was too busy trying to make plans for some big adventure with his daughter. The duo join the small expedition team and journey into the ruins. Now, normally this is when Go catches a Darmanitan. In this version, however, Darmanitan is too strong for him to even get a Pokeball thrown. As the Darmanitan rampages, the expedition leader hurries Go away, as Go doesn't even try to have Scorbunny fight back. When they're inside the ruins, they reunite with Kira, who is already exploring the ruins. She joins the group, and they venture farther in. As they walk, Go is questioned about why he didn't even attempt to defend himself. Go just shrugs, saying he finds battling unnecessary. The group ends up getting into another room, where they end up finding two Cophagrigus. The group realizes that someone is inside the Cophagrigus, and after Ash has Pikachu Thunderbolt the two ghost types away, they release a guy and his blue Psyduck from captivity. This is when the group meets the shiny hunter Shane Seeker, whose goal is to catch a shiny of every Pokemon. Now in this version, Go and Shane actually hit it off pretty well, as both are interested in catching Pokemon. Shane explains he had heard of this place and thought he might find a rare shiny Pokemon here, but only ended up getting in trouble. He ends up joining the group for the sake of his own protection, and the expedition team explores the room fully. This is when they find the different colored tiles with swirled symbols. The group realize they can push down these tiles, which then causes the room to change. A sphere appears from the center of the room, and it transforms into a large and powerful Golurk. This is when the raid battle begins. The group all attempt to attack Golurk. Well, all except for Go, who stays behind. Go watches as everyone attempts to battle Golurk, and are easily defeated. Kira's Braviary, the expedition leader's Litwick, Shane's Psyduck, even Ash's Pikachu are all defeated. Everyone keeps battling, trying to beat the enraged Golurk. But Go just watches, holding a Pokeball in hand. Scorbunny looks up at him, and Go just sighs, putting the Pokeball away. He admits he wants to catch Golurk, but he's not going to be able to beat it. He thinks back to the Flute Cup competition. Sure, he enjoyed seeing Ash battle, but he still felt bitter after losing in the first round against Rinto. He had said that he'd battle if necessary to catch a Pokemon, but so far he's never felt like it's been necessary. Even against Darmanitan, he thought if he was just given the right opening, he'd be able to catch it. He just wasn't given that opportunity, that was all. Scorbunny looks away from Go to the continuing raid battle. Shane's shiny Shelgon had just been taken down. Ash's Dragonite was flying around, however, it wasn't able to get in close enough without risking getting hit with a flash cannon. Kira and the leader were trying to provide support with their Meditite and Excadrill, however, they weren't doing enough. Scorbunny looks back to his trainer, who is still watching the battle. In that instant, Scorbunny runs in, choosing to act for Go, much to his shock. Scorbunny runs in attempting to get in a double kick, however the attack does nothing. Ash looks over to Go, seeing his shock and confusion, but then calls out to him and says that Golurk is a ghost type, meaning that double kick won't be effective. Go doesn't know what to do though. Scorbunny has only ever used double kick and quick attack before. Besides, he's not a battler. That was clear after he lost to Rento's Curlia. However, Go sees how determined Scorbunny is. Scorbunny even changes tactics from trying to hit with double kick to just kicking loose rocks to distract Golurk so Dragonite can get closer and hit with a Dragon Claw. Go doesn't understand why Scorbunny is so determined. He can't wrap his head around why Scorbunny would be attempting to battle when the one time they fought, they lost. Then he notices flames beginning to form around the rocks Scorbunny's kicking. He hadn't seen Scorbunny ever do this before, and yet now here Scorbunny was. This makes him realize that there's still more to being a trainer, and that he can improve, rather than his capabilities being fixed in place. He pulls out his Pokedex to see if that can help him, only to find that the pads on Scorbunny's feet and nose give off extreme amounts of heat whenever it wants to fight at full power. He looks back over to Scorbunny, and tells it to aim a rock at Golurk's head. Scorbunny is surprised by Go now taking initiative, but nods and does exactly that. Scorbunny picks up another rock, tosses it into the air, and kicks it as hard as it can. The rock ignites on impact, before flying straight into Golurk before it can fire a flash cannon at Dragonite. Golurk lurches back due to the impact of the fire attack. However, it doesn't seem defeated yet. The attack wasn't strong enough, however, Go doesn't seem that discouraged. He commands Scorbunny to attack again, while Ash commands Dragonite to attack as well. With a combination of Dragonite's Dragon Claw and Scorbunny's new fire attack, the Golurk falls. Ecstatic by the victory, Go runs over to Scorbunny. His starter Pokemon jumps into his arms, but in midair, begins to glow. When Go catches the fire rabbit, Scorbunny has now evolved into Raboot. Go is overjoyed by this, but there's still the matter of Golurk. Go looks to the group, only to see that none of them are acting, which confuses him. Ash gestures for him to catch Golurk. At first, Go isn't sure, but the others don't seem to have a problem. So he throws a Pokeball, and Golurk is caught. The expedition leader congratulates him, saying that he would have caught Golurk for himself, but Go and Ash were really the ones who put in the work at the very end. The others agree, with Shane also just mentioning it wasn't shiny, so he wasn't interested. Go thanks them for allowing him to catch Golurk, and he and Ash leave at the end of the day. In the morning, they contact Professor Cerise, who congratulates them on the expedition. He especially praises Go for the evolution of Scorbunny into Raboot, as well as the capture of Golurk, who he's especially interested in studying. Go thanks the professor before the duo are told their next destination, Solaceon Ruins. There have been more reported sightings of the Pokemon unknown in that area, but there's also been some strange things happening in the night. This gets Go and Ash really curious, so they quickly get a flight sorted out and head to Sinnoh. As they arrive in the Sinnoh region, they make the trek to Solaceon Ruins. The ruins are located in a town of the same name, not too far from Hardhome City, where they landed. So, the duo travel across the route, with Go getting to experience some Sinnoh's Pokemon for the first time. When they arrive in Solaceon Town, Ash's phone goes off again. He pulls it out to find another notification for the Pokemon World Championships. He locates the trainer in front of Solaceon's Pokemon Center and the two battle. The matchup is between Ash's Pikachu and the trainer's Bibarel. This trainer pushes Ash and Pikachu to their limits, but the two's combined power helps them defeat him and rank up to 2076. However, within the Pokemon Center, there is an egg, which begins to radiate with a strange energy. Its readings on the monitor go off the charts, startling Nurse Joy. And yet, at the same time Ash's battle ends, the anomaly stops, and the egg reverts back to normal. Nurse Joy's confused, but if things are normal again, then it should be fine, right? Ash, Go, and the trainer walk into the Pokemon Center after the battle to get their Pokemon healed up. Go talks with the trainer about where he can find his own Bibarel, as the battle has made him interested in catching one of his own. As the trainer explains, Ash gets a strange feeling. One he hasn't felt since when he flew on Lugia with Go. It feels like someone's talking to him, calling out to him. He walks in the direction he hears it coming from, confused yet at the same time calm. He ends up finding the room with the egg. He walks to it, only for it to roll off its pedestal and over to him. Nurse Joy comes in with Pikachu and Go, and is astounded by what she's seeing. She notes that the egg has never reacted this way around anyone, even the couple at the daycare next door who found it. Due to this, she decides to give the egg over to Ash. He accepts the egg and begins to carry it with him. Ash decides to have his team meet the new addition to the group and sends out the rest of them. Dragonite immediately tries to hug the egg, but Ash stops her, so she hugs Pikachu instead. Gengar acts as though he wants to hold the egg, only to play a mean joke on Ash by pretending to eat it. Scyther doesn't seem to take the joke well and proceeds to scold Gengar. Go makes a comment that Scyther's acting like the egg's big brother. Scyther doesn't respond to this, only carefully handing the egg back to Ash. Ash chuckles, deciding to let Scyther stay out with him until the egg hatches. Now, with the team introduced, the two decide it's best that they scout out the nearby ruins. So, Ash and Go head over to the ruins, only to run into a familiar and very popular face. As soon as the two notice her, Ash runs up to say hi. Go, on the other hand, stops dead in his tracks, completely floored, as standing right in front of him is the champion of Sinnoh, Cynthia. He's also surprised by the fact that Ash seems to be friends with her. Ash tries to introduce Cynthia to Go, but Go already knows her, as her reputation as a trainer precedes her. Cynthia chuckles and explains that while she's the champion, her forte is archaeology, so she was interested in studying the Solaceon ruins. Ash and Go think this is great, and that's why they're both here too. The three decide they'll work together during the expedition, forming their own team of sorts. As they're talking, Cynthia notices the egg that Ash is carrying with him. She asks where he got the egg from, to which Ash explains that he had just gotten it from Nurse Joy, who was taking care of it for the daycare people. Cynthia smiles, saying she hopes the Pokemon within and Ash grow to have a close bond. With that, they walk into the ruins. Inside, the trio find another inscription, similar to the one Bugsy read at the ruins of Elf. However, this one reads, "All lives touch other lives to create something anew and alive." Cynthia finds it fascinating and is curious as to why it was put there. Go immediately recalls what happened when the inscription at the ruins of Alf was touched, and warns the Sinnoh champion, who takes note of it. She then looks over, seeing a small doll. The champion carefully walks over, picking it up off the ground. It's a Clefairy doll, but what was it doing there? The trio decide there isn't anything else that they can find out, and that they leave for the day, choosing to stay at the Pokemon Center. The next day they wake up, but find a strange darkness over Salacion. It's almost as if the night they slept through never ended. Ash and Go seem very confused, but Cynthia remains calm. She holds up the Clefairy doll curiously, before telling the two they should head out. When the trio leave, they search around Salacion before heading to the ruins. Once they get there, they see a little girl going inside. Curious, the trio follow her as she goes through the ruins. They reach an exit at the top of a small mountain the ruins are built into. There they find the girl looking up at the stars. She says the name Clefairy to herself, which in turn has Cynthia pull out the Clefairy doll and hand it to her. The girl looks at her blankly, but begins to tear up a bit, clutching the doll. Cynthia asks the girl why she's there, but she doesn't respond, instead turning back to the night-like sky, clutching Clefairy. She looks at the stars silently, to which the trio join her. As they sit there, the girl finally says that she wished she could see the stars forever. Ash and Go look at each other, wondering if that's a correlation. That's when they begin to get the feeling that they're being watched. They all turn around, seeing another unknown. The girl seems the most surprised by this, making a comment as if she'd seen the unknown before. Ash and Go ask the girl if she knows why the unknown are there. However, rather than giving a reason, she just shouts at them, saying that she doesn't want the dawn to come and that she wants to watch the stars forever. That's when more appear briefly, before a mist surrounds them. The girl becomes more scared by this, and Cynthia tries to comfort her, leaving Ash and Go to be the ones to have to deal with whatever the mist is. Ash brings out Scyther, while Go sends out Raboot. That's when two shadowy figures emerge from the mist. Despite their shadowy appearance, they look almost exactly like Scyther and Raboot. This confuses the duo, but the only thing they can do is attempt to fight against the shadows. Ash and Go call for their Pokemon to use Fury Cutter and Ember respectively, only for the shadows to do the exact same thing. The shadows knock back the originals, with Scyther being sent flying into Ash. The two collide with each other before falling off the side of the mountain. The two tumble down the side before landing hard on the ground. Once they're on the ground, Ash checks to make sure the egg is okay. Luckily, the egg hasn't been harmed in any way. Ash sighs with relief before turning his attention to the shadow Scyther that has jumped down to continue their battle. Ash calls for Pikachu to assist, only for a shadow Pikachu to appear as well. The four Pokemon begin to battle, with the shadows being the stronger ones throughout despite using the exact same moves. However, Ash won't give up. He keeps pushing forward, pushing Pikachu and Scyther to do their best. That's when the egg begins to glow in his arms.
Up at the ruins, Go is unsure of what he's supposed to do. The Shadow Raboot is still dominating his own Raboot. He needs to come up with something in order to get the edge in this battle. That's when he notices Raboot hopping around a lot in his movements. Maybe he could use that to his advantage. He looks around, trying to see if he can find anything within the mist that he can use. However, all he can really see is the terrain. It isn't much, but it'll have to do. He commands Raboot to run towards the rock surface in front of him. Sure enough, the Shadow Raboot copies the movement. Both Raboot jump up the mountain, each one getting higher and higher with every movement. However, Go's Raboot is the one in the lead. Go calls for Raboot to jump as high as he can. Raboot responds, kicking hard into the rocks, causing them to break free, ignite, and fall onto the Shadow Raboot, leaving it behind. Raboot springs into action, going higher than Go could have ever imagined. He was just wanting to space them out and use the aerial momentum against the Shadow. But this felt different. Cynthia also notices this and comments that Raboot looks to be using the move Bounce. Go looks back at her before nodding and calling out to Raboot to use that attack. Raboot comes rocketing towards the ground at high speeds, kicking the Shadow clone as hard as it can upon dropping down on it. The Shadow slams into the ground and disappears. Go is amazed by Raboot's power. But soon, the mist forms another Shadow Raboot, which kicks Go's Raboot away. Go catches Raboot, who's been KO'd. Cynthia gets up and walks away from the girl briefly. She thanks Go for battling so hard, but assures him she'll take it from here. With that, she sends out her Garchomp. A Shadow Garchomp forms to combat her. Cynthia calls for Garchomp to use Sandstorm. Garchomp whips up the sand into a violent whirlwind around them. The Shadow tries to copy, but as the weather-based attack has been set, the move fails. The Shadow Raboot tries to rush in, but Cynthia quickly calls for Scale Shot. Garchomp fires its scales at the Raboot, sending it flying before disappearing. Shadow Garchomp tries to use the attack as well. However, because of the sandstorm, Cynthia's Garchomp is able to evade. Go is amazed by this, but also worries that Sandstorm helped Garchomp evade, which means the Shadow Garchomp would be able to as well. Cynthia makes note of that and decides to test this theory. She calls for another Scale Shot, which actually manages to hit, sending the Shadow flying through the misty area and disappearing within it. She smiles, then stating that it seemed the Shadows couldn't copy a Pokemon's ability, even though it copied their appearance and moves. However, that's when another Shadow Garchomp forms. Despite beating the first one, it seemed like the fog is still being there, meant these Shadows were just going to keep forming. Go brings out his Cubone to help continue the battle, and Shadow Replica, of course, forms as well. Back with Ash, the egg is glowing brightly. Ash holds it up, only for the egg to hatch into a Riolu, one which immediately jumps into action, firing a vacuum wave off at both Shadows. Ash holds it up. Back with Ash, the egg is glowing brightly. Ash holds it up, only for the egg to hatch into a Riolu, one which immediately jumps into action, firing a vacuum wave off at both Shadows. The Shadows are blown away, only for them to return with the Shadow Riolu by their side. Riolu is about to rush in and continue fighting, but Ash calls out to it. Riolu seems to feel something from Ash, and immediately stops. Ash tells it he loves the enthusiasm, but that it needs to be careful with these Shadows. It can't take them out on its own. Riolu seems to be confused, but Scyther flies up to it, offering its aid in battle. Pikachu also joins them, and the trio begin fighting together with powerful combinations. Ash watches on, calling out to them in order to help them in the battle. He's definitely amazed by Riolu, and feels a familiar power exuding off of it with every attack. Every command Ash gives Riolu, it follows perfectly. It's almost like they're in perfect sync with each other. The battle keeps raging on, but despite how well they're all doing, each time a shadow is beaten, another one takes its place. Cynthia notices her Garchomp is getting exhausted, as is Go's Cubone. She looks back to the girl, who still seems scared. She calmly leaves the battle and approaches her again, asking if the girl knows why the unknown are acting this way. The girl starts to tear up again, but with Cynthia presenting herself in the way she is, the girl decides it's okay to explain. She tells the champion she wanted to keep looking at the stars, but because of a friend she lost, she squeezes her Clefairy doll tightly, holding it as close as possible. Cynthia realizes that the unknown caused this eternal night due to the girl's wishes. She puts a hand on the girl's shoulder, telling her it's okay. Her friend is with her even though they aren't around. The girl, tears streaming down her face, looks up at the champion, surprised by this. Cynthia looks over to Garchomp and says she feels the same even if she is ever separated from her partner, and that no matter where the girl's friend is now, the two are with each other in spirit. The girl begins to understand and comes to terms with this. As she begins to calm down, the mist rolls away, and the shadows are beaten once and for all. Then finally, the sun begins to rise over Selacion once more. And so the day is saved. Literally. The trio returns the girl to her home, and Go notices the tiny blue Pokemon that's now with Ash. Putting two and two together, he realizes this is the Pokemon that hatched from the egg. Ash smiles, introducing Riolu to the group. He also sends out Gengar and Dragonite to meet the new addition to the team. Of course, Dragonite tackles Riolu in order to give the baby Pokemon the biggest hug it will ever receive. However, throughout all of this, Riolu seems particularly interested in Cynthia. As Cynthia says she's going to head off in order to check out some other ruins in the Sinnoh region, Riolu breaks away from Ash's team and runs up to her. Riolu seems determined for some reason. Even when Scyther tries to calm Riolu down, it won't back away from Cynthia. In that moment, Cynthia and Ash realize Riolu wants to battle her. Cynthia decides to accept the challenge, as she is intrigued by the little Pokemon's wishes to battle. So with that, a battle between Ash and Cynthia begins. Cynthia decides to have the battle be a double battle, as Scyther and Riolu already seem to have a sort of bond that she would like to test. Ash agrees to this, and so the battle begins. It's Ash's Scyther and Riolu versus Cynthia's Garchomp and Lucario. Before Ash can call for an attack, Riolu fires a vacuum wave off at the Lucario, who simply dodges it. Cynthia calls for Garchomp to set up the sandstorm like before. The weather changes, making it difficult for Riolu and Scyther to see. Ash calls for an air slash from Scyther, but before the attack can even be fired, Cynthia calls for Lucario to use Focus Blast, and for Garchomp to use Scale Shot. Both attacks land, immediately knocking out Ash's two Pokemon. The battle is over, before it can even truly get underway. Ash doesn't know what to think. Cynthia just smiles before kneeling down in front of Riolu. She tells it to get stronger, but also to listen to Ash. It's only through working in tandem with each other that Riolu will increase in power. With that, she leaves. After Nurse Joy heals Riolu and Scyther, Riolu decides to make it official that it will be joining the team, and catches itself for Ash, which feels awfully familiar for some reason. With that, the two call up Professor Cerise and explain what they just experienced. Cerise is astounded and thanks them for the info. Go then asks why the unknown didn't just bring back the girl's friend if that's what she wanted. Cerise isn't sure, but hypothesizes that it might have been the unknown's way of helping the girl feel better after losing her friend. He then changes the subject, telling them that he wants them to return to the Galar region, as there's a geoglyph he wants them to look at. So with that, the two head to Galar. Upon arriving in Turffield, Ash gets a little distracted by the massive stadium that is the Turffield Gym. Despite Go reminding him that they were here for the geoglyph, Ash wants to quickly check it out. As Ash gets closer to the stadium, he notices a large herd of Wooloo heading towards him. Just before they reach him, a voice calls out, scaring the Wooloo away. A large man in a green jersey and a farmer's sun hat walks up. As soon as he does, both his and Ash's Rotom phones go off. Sure enough, they're both in the World Championships. The guy introduces himself as the Turffield gym leader, Milo. Ash is very happy to meet the Galar gym leader. But before he can ask for a battle, Go cuts him off, reminding him of the geoglyph. Milo chuckles and offers to show them it. The duo thank the gym leader before following him to the top of the hill. There they see, on another larger hill, is some sort of large creature being depicted in the geoglyph. Go begins snapping all sorts of photos with his Rotom phone in order to get a few to show the professor. As he starts asking things about the geoglyph. But Milo is having a little difficulty explaining. That's when someone else approaches and offers to explain. This is Sonia, the granddaughter and research assistant of Professor Magnolia. After introducing herself, she tells Ash and Go about what the geoglyph depicts, saying it's supposed to represent a major event in Galar's history. The Darkest Day. 3,000 years ago, a black storm covered all of Galar. Giant Pokemon were running rampant and almost destroyed the region. The only thing that saved the region was a noble hero wielding a sword and shield. This hero fought back against the giant Pokemon, until eventually, the Darkest Day was over. Go comments about how the giant Pokemon sound a lot like Dynamax and Gigantamax Pokemon, like the ones Lance, Leon, and Raihan used in their battles. Sonia commends Go for the observation, and explains that's exactly what she's researching for her grandmother. She and Go continue to talk to each other, Go really keen on learning anything he can about the Darkest Day, leaving Milo and Ash to talk to each other. Finally, Ash is getting the chance to challenge Milo, but before he can, Milo actually asks him for a battle instead. Ash is surprised, but Milo goes on to explain it's because he heard about what Ash did at Winden. Beating that Gigantamax Dreadnought by Gigantamaxing his own Pikachu, and without even using a Dynamax band, is definitely interesting, and Milo wants to test his strength. Ash accepts the challenge, and after Go and Sonia finish talking, they head to Turffield Stadium for a match. The battle is a 2-on-2. Ash decides that since Milo wants to see his Pikachu in action, that's who he'll start off with. Milo responds by sending out his Eldegoss. Ash calls for a quick attack, only for Milo to counter with a Cotton Guard. Pikachu gets caught within the cotton on Eldegoss, allowing it to then sap Pikachu's strength with a Giga Drain. Milo tells Ash not to expect him to go easy. He's in the World Championships to work his way up to Leon and finally beat the unbeatable champion. In the stands, Sonia mentions to Go that this is what all Galar trainers are striving for, whether they're in the Galar League or the World Championships. Because of this, the Galar region's gym leaders are a lot stronger than most gym leaders tend to be. This proclamation from Milo only makes Ash more excited to battle. Once Pikachu escapes Eldegoss's cotton, he calls for an Electro Web, which holds down Eldegoss once it hits. Ash then calls for Pikachu to jump into the air and use Iron Tail. Pikachu does so, but before the attack hits, Milo commands Eldegoss to break free and counter with Hyper Voice. The Hyper Voice rips through the Electro Web, freeing Eldegoss and sending Pikachu flying back. Ash realizes that this battle isn't going to end well for Pikachu, so he recalls him for now. Ash tries to think of who he should send out next. At first he thinks he should send out Scyther or Dragonite, but Gengar pops out of its Pokeball. The spectators of the battle, as well as Milo himself, all look confused by Gengar's sudden appearance. But Ash notices that Gengar is really wanting to battle right now, so he decides to let the Ghost type, immediately calling for an Ice Punch. Gengar disappears into the floor of the stadium, which greatly confuses Milo. When the Ghost resurfaces, it strikes with an Ice Punch before Eldegoss can even defend itself. Gengar keeps putting up attacks like this, disappearing into the ground before resurfacing to Ice Punch Eldegoss. When Milo finally thinks he has the timing down and calls for Eldegoss to dodge, Ash counters by having Gengar use Psychic before firing a Shadow Ball to knock out Eldegoss, much to the shock of Milo and Sonia.
Milo is a little impressed by how quickly Ash turned the battle around. He calls back Eldegoss before bringing out Flapple. Ash decides he'll have Gengar just go in for another Ice Punch, but as the Ghost type is phasing into the floor, Milo calls for Flapple to set up Dragon Dance. Once Gengar resurfaces, Flapple has enough speed to dodge the attack. Then Milo has Flapple use Dragon Rush, which hits Gengar hard. Ash tries to have Gengar use Psychic, but Flapple then uses Grav Apple, which knocks Gengar back. Milo then takes this opportunity to Gigantamax his Flapple. Once Flapple is in its new Gigantamax state, Gengar is amazed by the sheer size and power it now seems to have. However, before Gengar can counterattack, Flapple knocks it out with the G-Max Tartness. The battle is tied up, with Ash's only Pokemon left being Pikachu. He brings Pikachu out and Gigantamaxes as well. In this larger state, Pikachu still has trouble moving around, something it isn't used to. Milo has Flapple use Max Airstream, while Ash calls for a Max Strike. Both hit, canceling each other out. Ash then calls for a G-Max Volt Crash, which hits hard and paralyzes Flapple, before Milo manages to get it to hit off a Max Wormwind. With that final attack, Flapple reverts to its normal state. With Pikachu not being used to its bigger and slower form, Milo expects to have the advantage, calling for an Acrobatics. However, the paralysis takes its toll. Ash calls for one last G-Max Volt Crash, and it's enough to KO. Ash wins the battle, ranking up to 1,250. With the battle over, Ash and Milo shake hands. Milo commends him, but also says that the Gigantamax form doesn't seem to be Pikachu's forte. Ash agrees, as Pikachu is more about being able to move quickly, and the large state decreases mobility too much for Pikachu's liking. Milo suggests that maybe he'll find a Pokemon in his team more suited for the form. Ash looks at his new ranking and notices how close he is to the Great class. With that, Milo suggests that he should participate in an official World Championships Battle Festival. Ash asks what that is, to which Milo explains the Battle Festival is an event that is held for trainers in the World Championships to meet up at. He believes he heard one was being planned soon. It was only a matter of where the location was going to end up being. Ash thanks him for the info before he and Go leave. They head to the Pokemon Center for the night, and Sonia catches up with them. She wanted to say that seeing as they're all researchers, if they find anything out about the Darkest Day and its connections with Gigantamax, to let her know. She exchanges contact information with them before they part ways. The next day, Ash and Go are enjoying a nice breakfast outside the Pokemon Center when they end up finding a Sobble. Almost immediately, the Sobble starts crying, causing everyone else to cry. It runs off, and Ash and Go follow the water starter, before it ends up running into a Silicobra. Go brings out Cubone, who knocks away the Silicobra with a bone meringue. Silicobra digs and disappears into the ground as Sobble begins to cry again. Ash and Go try and calm it down, but with it causing them to cry uncontrollably, Ash and Go try to calm it down, but with it causing them to cry uncontrollably, they're struggling. Sobble ends up just running away again, this time jumping into a river. It seems to completely disappear on contact with the water, so Ash and Go are unable to find out where it went. The two split up following the river in different directions. Meanwhile, Team Rocket have decided to go to Galar once again in order to find more Pokemon to add to Team Rocket's collection. That's when they end up running into the little Sobble Ash and Go had met. As it's a relatively rare Pokemon, they decide they want to give it to Giovanni, and soon cage the lizard Pokemon. Sobble begins to cry again, which, like with Ash and Go, makes the trio start tearing up against their will. It annoys them a lot, but it also helps Go locate the lizard Pokemon. Seeing Team Rocket again, Go attempts to battle, this time more determined and believing he can actually win, unlike previous encounters. He sends out Raboot and Cubone, while Team Rocket call him the Gotcha Machine. Go battles the Magnezone and Armaldo that the Team Rocket duo get from the machine. Despite the type advantage, Go's Pokemon just can't compare with the sheer power of Magnezone and Armaldo. However, Go won't give up until Sobble is freed. This sentiment seems to resonate with Sobble, who stops crying and plucks up the courage to try and help Go. Once it manages to trick Team Rocket and get itself free, Sobble joins Go's side. The three are much stronger together. And once Ash returns, the Rocket Trio are no match, being blasted off into the sky. Sobble seems happier with Go, and with that all settled, Go captures Sobble. They contact Professor Cerise and explain everything they saw. Cerise congratulates them and tells them that was the last task he had for them. So with that, they head back to Vermilion City. Now, this isn't the last event in Galar, as after being blasted off, Team Rocket end up running into a Morpeko, who ends up following them around from then on out, and also eats all of their food. Poor Team Rocket. Although, Go would probably think they deserve it. The next day, Ash and Go wake up to find out that the Battle Festival Milo had mentioned now had a location set in place. That being Shalor City in the Kalos region. Ash remembers Kalos fondly, and also wonders that, since it's in Kalos, if he'd end up meeting an old friend of his there. Go is also interested in catching some Kalos Pokemon, so the two tell Cerise their plans. And he thinks it's a great idea. He also says that since they'll be in Shalor City, he wants them to visit the Tower of Mastery at some point, so they can learn about Mega Evolution. Go isn't too familiar on the topic, but Ash knows it well, saying he's fought a few in his travels. So with that, they're off to Kalos so Ash can battle, and the duo can learn more about Mega Evolution. Once they arrive in Shalor City, the two split up. Go heads into the nearby forest to catch some Kalos Pokemon, while Ash heads to the venue for the Battle Festival so he can register. Ash gets to the venue and immediately registers. He finds out that this festival, he is allowed to use any of the Pokemon he has on his team at the time, so he doesn't have to register a specific group to use. He puts his name down and prepares himself for the tournament. While Go is in the forest catching different Pokemon, he ends up running into a man wearing a gray jogging suit. The man introduces himself as Gherkin, and he was just on his way to the Battle Festival to watch the proceedings. Go introduces himself as well and mentions he and his friend came from Kanto so he could participate. Gherkin asks if the kid's name happens to be Ash, and then explains that Ash is a good friend of his granddaughter. So with that, the two decide to head to the venue together to watch both battle. While Ash is getting his team ready, he begins to feel a familiar presence nearby. He turns, and sure enough, it's his friend Karina and her Lucario. The two reunite, and Karina is glad to see Ash has a Riolu of his own now. Ash smiles and introduces his team to Karina. Dragonite, of course, goes in for the hug with Karina, much to the gym leader's surprise. Riolu, however, seems to be particularly interested in Karina's Lucario. Riolu can definitely tell that Lucario is strong, and is interested in battling the evolved Pokemon, similarly to how it fought Cynthia's. However, Ash tells Riolu that they need to save their strength for the tournament. After a bit more talking, the two have to part ways, as the tournament is about to begin. The first round is just a simple one-on-one match. Ash's first battle is against a trainer by the name of Jake, who sends out a chest spin. Ash decides this would be the best chance to test out his Riolu. Riolu wants to prove how strong it is, but remembering what Cynthia said, does as Ash tells him to. The battle goes on for a while, with Jake's chestman knowing several strong moves, such as Seed Bomb, Wood Hammer, and Brick Break. However, with Riolu following Ash's instructions, it only takes a few vacuum waves for them to win in the end. Ash checks his rank, and due to this first round, he's upped his rank to 1,223. Karina's round is next, and she makes quick work of her opponent with the use of her Mienshao. The next battle begins not too long after, and once again, it's a one-on-one match. Riolu wants to battle again, but Ash decides to have the baby Pokemon get some rest, choosing to instead bring in Scyther. His opponent responds by bringing out the Fire-type Pyroar. This definitely complicates things, as it puts Ash at a disadvantage. He calls for Scyther to use Slash, but Pyroar blows Scyther back with a powerful flamethrower. Ash calls for a Swords Dance, while Pyroar fires off a Hyper Beam. Scyther is blown back, but it's too late for Pyroar. Scyther's Swords Dance was still pulled off, allowing Scyther to take the opportunity to hit hard with a powerful Slash, while Pyroar recharges. With Scyther now closer to the opponent, Ash calls for the Bug type to leap back and fire off an Air Slash. Scyther hits the Air Slash, which also manages to block another Flamethrower. Then Scyther is able to run in with another Slash, taking out Pyroar, and ranking Ash up to 1,159. Karina also manages to get through relatively easily. The third round begins, and now the tournament has moved into 2-on-2 battles. Ash's next opponent starts off with a Furfrou, so Ash brings in Riolu again. The baby Pokemon struggles against Furfrou, as it uses some powerful takedowns and wild charge attacks. Riolu's moveset is currently a little too limited, as Riolu only knows Vacuum Wave, so Ash needs to get creative. Luckily, he's able to use Furfrou's attack against it by having Riolu use Vacuum Wave defensively. Anytime Furfrou attacks, Riolu jumps up and uses Vacuum Wave to push it in any direction to avoid. Then the takedown or wild charge does recoil damage, and Riolu can then fire another Vacuum Wave to damage it more. With this strategy in mind, Ash manages to take down Furfrou. His opponent then sends out Simisage, which Ash swaps Scyther in for. He sets up a Swords Dance before taking it down swiftly with a Fury Cutter. This brings Ash's rank to 1,124. The semifinal round has the same rules as the previous one. Ash sends out Gengar as the opponent sends in Golett. As the battle progresses, Ash realizes that Golett can't phase through things like Gengar, and uses this to his advantage by having Gengar phase in and out while using moves like Shadow Ball, Nightshade, and Ice Punch. With this, Gengar already being a lot faster, it quickly dispatches Golett, and so, The opponent brings in a Clawitzer. Ash calls for a Psychic, but his opponent hits with an Aqua Jet before firing off a point-blank Dark Pulse, knocking out Gengar. Ash sends in Pikachu next, and the Yellow Mouse immediately has to dodge a Flash Cannon. Ash doesn't know how he can have Pikachu evade these attacks for long, but then realizes the simple solution. He has Pikachu use Electro Web to block off the large claw that moves like Flash Cannon and Dark Pulse are fired from. With that threat out of the way, even when Clawitzer is commanded to use Crab Hammer, Pikachu gets in with a Thunderbolt, and then finishes it with an Iron Tail. The battle goes to Ash in the end, and his rank goes up to 1010. He makes it to the finals, and there's only one trainer keeping him from the Great class. Karina. Pikachu and Riolu both want to battle Karina. However, Ash has them sit out, as there's two members of his team he believes can handle it best. One of them, which is yet to battle in the World Championships. Riolu and Pikachu are disappointed, but sit on the sidelines as Ash requests. With the battle beginning, Ash and Karina send out their first Pokemon, Gengar and Mienshao. Karina immediately starts off with acrobatics, and Ash realizes just how fast Mienshao is, as Gengar can't even dodge. Karina then calls for a U-turn, which Ash tries to have Gengar stop with Psychic, only for that to fail. Mienshao is called back, and Gengar comes out instead. Ash tries to have Gengar use Shadow Ball, but Lucario bats it back with a Bone Rush, before absolutely destroying Gengar. Ash is already down a Pokemon due to Lucario's strength. Strength that leaves Ash's Riolu in awe. Ash brings out Dragonite, while Karina switches Mienshao back in. Immediately, Ash calls for Dragon Claw, which Mienshao counters with High Jump Kick. Ash then calls for a Dragon Dance as Karina tells Mienshao to Double Slap. As the fighting type goes in for the attack, it only makes Dragonite spin faster while using the move. When Mienshao goes for another High Jump Kick, a single Dragon Claw sends it flying back and knocks it out. Ash has managed to tie things up. However, Karina still has her ace. With Lucario now on the field, Ash has to be careful. Immediately, Karina Mega Evolves her Lucario, surprising the audience, including Go, who's never seen a Mega Pokemon before. Ash calls for another Dragon Dance, which Karina has Lucario cut off with Aura Sphere. Once the Aura Sphere hits, Lucario rushes in with a power-up punch, striking the Dragon type hard and boosting Mega Lucario's attack power. When Dragonite gets up, she looks really mad. Ash calls for another Dragon Dance, which ends up whipping up the winds around them. Lucario tries to hold its ground, but Dragonite then flies in. Ash calls for a Dragon Claw, and Dragonite hits hard. Lucario is about to strike with another power-up punch, but then suddenly, Dragonite's eyes glow red. A red aura forms around Ash's Dragonite as it hits hard. Lucario falls and the battle is over. Ash is confused. It looked like the move Outrage, but it wasn't like Dragonite to lose control. She was always so gentle. However, now Ash can celebrate, as with his defeat of Karina, he ranks up to 921, which means he's already in the Great class. The tournament ends there, and Ash meets with Karina afterwards. Karina congratulates him on getting into the Great class. Ash still seems worried about Dragonite lashing out like it did. Gherkin says that it may simply be because of it learning Outrage, and not wanting to worry about it. Ash then mentions that Riolu seemed really interested in Lucario and Mega Evolution. Karina smiles and tells the baby Pokemon to get stronger alongside Ash, and maybe one day he'll be able to achieve Mega Evolution too. Riolu nods, but takes this a little too seriously, deciding now is the perfect time to train, and runs off into the forest without a second thought. The group try and follow after the baby Pokemon, but surprisingly it's a lot faster than they expected. The group decided it would be best to split up, with Karina and Gherkin bringing out their Lucario to have them attempt to sense Riolu's aura. Ash also tries to sense it by himself, but rather than finding the baby's Pokemon's aura, he senses something much more dangerous. As Riolu runs through the forest, it is attempting to fight the Pokemon it sees. However, unlike in the original when Riolu had run away after it just hatched, Riolu has battled a few times already. So when it runs into a Pokemon, there are a few times where it actually wins the fight. Riolu is adamant about getting stronger, but with this fixation, Riolu fails to notice a large red root creeping towards it. In an instant, Riolu is caught, ensnared by the root. The baby Pokemon attempts to break free by firing off a vacuum wave, but it's no use. Riolu is no longer able to move, and can only submit to the will of this root. Something flies through the air. With tremendous speed, it cuts through the root, freeing Riolu. The baby Pokemon begins to fall to the ground, but is caught by the creature who had saved it. Riolu sat down, only for the creature to turn and see more roots beginning to form. It hits its legs, and water forms in its hands, creating some sort of star shape. It combines them into one big star and throws it at the roots. The star-shaped water object flies through the air before cleanly cutting through. Riolu is amazed by the power of its savior. It wants power like that too. Riolu gets up as another root forms. Riolu's savior begins to form another star-shaped projectile. Riolu attempts to do the same, copying move for move, but nothing happens. Its savior seems to notice Riolu's determination, and nods. It then uses the move Double Team, splitting into multiple forms. Riolu is amazed by this, and with a little effort manages to use it as well. As Riolu's savior throws the star-shaped projectile, Riolu fires a vacuum wave. Each Double Team clone of both Riolu and the shadowy figure land their attacks and destroy the root. Riolu looks very happy to have been able to learn Double Team, but then senses someone getting closer. When Ash gets there, he's relieved to find Riolu is safe. However, he stops, noticing who Riolu's with. Before he says another word, the one who saved Riolu leaps into the air, disappearing into the trees. Ash doesn't know what to say, so he smiles and walks over to Riolu. He says he's glad Riolu got to meet a good friend of his, and promises they'll never meet. Ash says he's glad Riolu got to meet a good friend of his, and promises they'll meet him again someday. But only once they're stronger than they already are. Riolu agreed, before showing Ash what he managed to learn. Riolu uses the move Double Team and makes multiple clones of itself. Ash is very happy about this. He remembers that his old friend used to use that move a lot. He smiles, and the two head back to the group. And that's where we're going to leave things for right now. So what do you guys think? Are you interested in seeing how Ash's team grows from here? Did you like these 2 mini arcs of exploration and battling? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you for 6 years of content making fun. I'm going to take a bit of a break for a while and try to get work done on other videos, and other projects in general. After all, this video is a lot longer than I planned for it to be. But I'll at most be gone a week or two. But with that, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!